Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump calling on Democrats to end the shutdown and breaking ground on a new White House ballroom. No Trump-Putin meeting for now. The White House says it's not on the schedule yet after Secretary Rubio's productive call with Russia's Lavrov. With the government shutdown now at 21 days, it's become the second longest in history. Senate Leader John Thune will try a new approach this week aimed at getting some federal workers paid. A key battleground state advances a GOP redistricting map ahead of midterms. What does this mean for a Democratic seat?
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump hosting Senate Republicans at the Rose Garden while construction begins in the East Wing. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, at the White House. So, Mari, good afternoon. Can you tell us what is the latest from the White House luncheon?
Don, good afternoon. So as we're now entering the fourth week of that government shutdown, President Trump is welcoming GOP senators here in the newly renovated Rose Garden. And he's calling on every Senate Democrat to open the government. And this is as the Senate is blocking the bill to end the government shutdown for the 11th time. Now let's take a look at what President Trump has to say about that government shutdown. Take a look.
Unfortunately, in a craven and pointless act of partisan spite, Chuck Schumer, who I've known for a long time, and the radical left Democrats are holding the entire federal government hostage to appease the extremists in their party. We will not be extorted on this crazy plot of theirs. They've never done this before. Nobody has. You always vote for an extension. Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats need to vote for the clean, bipartisan CR and reopen our government. It's got to be reopened right now. We're not doing that. They are the obstructionists.
Chuck Schumer, meanwhile, is blaming Republicans for the ongoing government shutdown. And this event is coming just after President Trump this morning receives the Architect of Peace Award from the Richard Nixon Foundation. The former president's surviving family members were in the Oval Office this morning to present President Trump with that award. And after President Trump also took Nixon's family members to the West Wing colonnade to see Nixon's presidential photo in that new presidential Walk of Fame. Don.
So, Mari, the event is happening in the newly renovated Rose Garden. What about the other renovation that's happening at the White House?
Sure, Don. So demolition is now underway for that White House ballroom, and it's taking place in the East Wing. So on Monday, an excavator was spotted tearing down portions of the East Wing, as you can see here. And we saw President Trump today start his remarks celebrating not only the Rose Garden renovation and the Presidential Walk of Fame, but also this ballroom. Take a look.
Most excitingly, on the other side, you see the fence and the wall. We're building a world-class ballroom. You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. When I hear that sound, it reminds me of money. In this case, it reminds me of lack of money because I'm paying for it. It's going to be one of the most beautiful ballrooms anywhere in the world.
The Trump administration is saying that President Trump and private donors will be funding this ballroom renovation and that the architecture will be in keeping with the current White House architecture. And Don, meanwhile, in foreign affairs, a White House official is saying that there are now no plans for President Trump to meet with President Putin in the immediate future. This is coming as Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a phone call, which the White House official is calling, quote, productive, adding that because of that, an in-person meeting is not necessary. And similarly, President Trump, in his remarks today, is saying that his expected meeting with CCP leader Xi Jinping may not happen. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you very much. A major legal victory for the Trump administration. A federal court has cleared the way for President Trump to deploy National Guard troops to Portland. Here's more on that ruling.
A federal appeals court has ruled President Trump can deploy National Guard troops into Portland, despite opposition from local and state leaders. Trump on September 27th had ordered 200 National Guard troops to the city. The three-judge panel from the Ninth Circuit granted the Justice Department's request to lift a lower court block on the deployment. The court said the move was an appropriate response after protesters damaged a federal building and threatened ICE officers. But one judge dissented, warning that allowing troops over what she called merely inconvenient protests is dangerous. Oregon's Attorney General also criticized the ruling, saying it puts the country on a dangerous path. White House officials praised the decision, saying Trump is protecting federal property and personnel. Trump has defended his right to send troops. Over the weekend, he once again raised the possibility of invoking the Insurrection Act, something he called the strongest power a president has. He told Fox News the act gives presidents a, quote, unquestioned power, but that he chooses not to use it. In Portland, protesters reacted with a mix of caution and defiance. Some wore costumes and said they're ready for the challenge.
Bring 'em. I mean, Portland's up for the challenge, as you can see. We're ready to do anything it takes.
Some worry that troops from outside the state could escalate tensions, but others believe there can be mutual respect between protesters and the troops.
Of course, I think on both sides we have oddballs here and there, right? On both sides, but as long as we can be peaceful people, we are great.
Portland officials argue protests have been small and peaceful, with few arrests since June, and a lower court judge previously found no evidence that the city was experiencing a rebellion or that protests seriously interfere with law enforcement. As the legal fight continues, the administration is also launching new security operations elsewhere, including a Coast Guard deployment along the Rio Grande. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says Operation Riverwall will involve hundreds of personnel and more than 100 boats in Texas. Officials say since Trump took office, Border Patrol has recorded its lowest arrest numbers since 1970. Data from Homeland Security shows the number of apprehensions made at the border has dropped 95% since the Biden years.
President Trump posted on Truth Social that since January 20th, more than 28,000 violent criminals have been arrested. Joining us to discuss is Kyle Scheidler, Director and Senior Analyst for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism at the Center for Security Policy, and editor of the book Unmasking Antifa: 5 Perspectives on a Growing Threat. Good afternoon to you, Kyle. You know, Trump said that over 6,000 illegal weapons were seized, more than 1,700 child predators, and 300 human traffickers taken off the streets. And he says that we're bringing law and order back to America. Kyle, your first reactions to that?
Well, I think what we are seeing with this announcement of arrests is the degree to which illegal immigration and drug trafficking and organized crime really drive violent crime in America, and especially in America's urban cities. The Trump administration's desire to see immigration law enforced and to crack down on organized crime and especially sophisticated transnational cartels, I think is really driving some of these statistics. So I think that effort has paid off for the Trump administration.
But Kyle, what do you say to some reports that I've seen indicating that Trump is simply taking credit for crime numbers that were already declining? And this is a trend that, according to the report, started after the pandemic.
Well, I have some skepticism with some of those early reports, in part because there were multiple cases where some of these urban centers were underreporting crime. We certainly saw that play out in the District of Columbia, for example, where you had extensive underreporting of crime going on prior to the Trump effort to secure the district. And this is simply telling people not to believe the evidence of their own eyes. People in these urban centers are seeing the violence every day. They're seeing the crime take place every day. And to tell them that actually, no, crime has been down for years is just not credible to the people who have to live here.
And Kyle, I was wondering if you could compare what Trump is doing with previous administrations. Because, you know, for example, FBI Director Kash Patel's data showing that under the Biden administration, year-over-year arrests of criminals were between 15,000, 17,000, and now Trump had nearly 30,000 in the first 7 months or so, compared to those year-over-year numbers.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of ways that sometimes the federal government can game these statistics. They can take over state cases that local or state law enforcement had already made and then make them federal. Sometimes there are totally legitimate reasons for doing that, but in some cases it can be used to goose the numbers a little bit. And both administrations are sometimes guilty of that, Democrat and Republican. But I think, as I said, I think what we're really seeing driving some of these numbers is the crackdown on illegal immigration and the very heavy targeting of organized crime and transnational criminal groups.
And how is the DOJ playing a role in all this?
Well, when you're talking about investigating very sophisticated transnational criminal organizations and organized crime networks, especially those that extend across regional borders, state borders, even international borders, the Department of Justice has to play an important role in doing some of that investigation, helping tie together the connections, making state cases into federal cases where there's an appropriate reason for doing that, and really putting things together uh, to make these large cases that really put a hurt on organized crime. You can pick off their low-level street soldiers, and these cartels don't really feel the heat for that. But if you seize money, if you seize product, and if you put leadership in prison, that they notice. And I think that the Department of Justice needs to be driving those kinds of endeavors.
Do you see these numbers that Trump is calling historic? Do you see that being sustained or maintaining this rate of arrest throughout the rest of his term?
We'll certainly see. I think we have to be careful with operational tempo. You can burn out your federal law enforcement. You only have so many investigators, so many task force officers. That's one thing that you need to be careful with. So they need to be making sure that they're utilizing federal law enforcement to make the best cases, the biggest cases, to do the deep investigations, and that they're utilizing state and local partners to do a lot of the work, that they're properly resourcing state and local officers for that support as well, if they want to sustain this in the long term.
And we just saw in the footage there the National Guard on site at different locations. On that topic, do you see sending the Guard to cities as being too expensive? For example, the DC deployment could cost taxpayers almost $2 million a day.
It's certainly not my preference for how to deal with the threat of crime in the urban centers. In some cases, especially in those cities where federal law enforcement is coming under attack, or where federal facilities are being blockaded or essentially besieged. Earlier in your report, you mentioned Portland being a good example. Chicago is another. Where you have cases like that, I think certainly National Guard deployment can be justified, and we saw the court support that. In cases where you have good state and local cooperation, I'm not sure that it's strictly necessary. The Trump administration likes to send a message. They like to hit hard and fast. And there may be something to say for a strong show of force to some of these gangs to let them know who really controls the streets. But I wouldn't want to try to maintain that National Guard show of force for any longer than strictly necessary.
So, Kyle, in your view, do you think the Trump administration is striking at the heart of why there is crime?
I think so. Their focus on illegal immigration, human trafficking is just a major driver of organized crime in the United States. Illegal immigration feeds the street gangs that recruit out of illegal immigrants. It feeds human trafficking, prostitution, drug smuggling, and the Trump administration has taken that challenge head on. And when you do that, you will see a commensurate decrease in violent crime. And we're seeing the effect of that.
Okay, Kyle, just one last question here. And, according to a August AP poll, it showed that a little over half of U.S. adults support Trump's handling of crime, and 81% say crime is a major problem in large cities. A lot has happened since then. Do you expect this issue to gain even more national interest in the time to come?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I think is so interesting about the Trump administration's emphasis on crime in the major urban cities. This is not, for the most part, where Trump's voters live, right? This is where these are blue cities. Often they're blue states. These are where his opponent's supporters live. But he is committed to ensuring them a better way of life, ensuring their safety, ensuring their right to live as American citizens and not be afraid of violent crime. There are a lot of Republicans, I think, who wrote off some of the major cities, and President Trump, to his credit, did not do that. And I expect to see that in the polls, some of that will pay off for him.
Well, all right, Kyle, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A key battleground state advances a GOP redistricting map ahead of midterms. What does it mean for a Democratic seat? Stay tuned after this break. Democratic senators yesterday evening blocked the government funding bill for an 11th time. The shutdown is at 21 days, the second longest in history. Many predict it will stretch further than 35 days, the longest one ever. Senate Leader John Thune is trying a new approach this week. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
50-43, a failed vote that's now become routine in the Senate. Democrats, for an 11th time on Monday, tanked a clean resolution to fund the government at the demand of their health care goals.
But that agreement actually needs to meet the needs of the American people and improve the quality of life of everyday Americans, while at the same time decisively addressing the health care crisis that Republicans have created.
Obamacare subsidies and walking back Medicaid cuts at the top of their priorities. Republicans, though, reject the $1.5 trillion demand.
They were catering to the same radical base that is just days away from electing an open Marxist as mayor of New York City. And now that Chuck Schumer has had his spectacle, he's had his big protest against America, this is our plea. We're asking, and I think everybody in this room and everybody watching, listening to our voices this morning should be hoping that he is finally now ready to go to work and end this shutdown.
A new divide emerged on Monday around a proposal to partially pay federal workers during the shutdown, with some Democrats already rejecting what they called the GOP's attempt to pick and choose who gets paid.
If they're open for paying all federal workers, then why don't they just reopen the government?
Republican leader John Thune this week is expected to bring up a bill to pay troops and some federal workers during the shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The North Carolina Senate is expected to pass a redrawn congressional district map to the North Carolina House. A Senate election committee approved the new map yesterday. If the House approves it, the map would eliminate the state's only competitive U.S. House district, currently held by a Democrat. North Carolina's current map has 10 Republican and 4 Democratic districts. The new proposal would take away 1 Democratic district. Protesters at yesterday's committee meeting accused lawmakers of racism. They claimed the changes would eliminate one of the state's 3 black members of Congress. Republican Senator Ralph Heiss said the move is intended to help maintain party control in Washington. Senator GOP is speaking in front of the White House after lunch with President Trump. Let's take a look.
Before that can happen, we've got to have 5 Democrats who have a little backbone and a willingness to take on their leadership and do the right thing for the country.
You are now 3 weeks into this shutdown, and the two sides don't appear to even be talking. Do you owe it to the American people to at least be negotiated?
Well, I think we have negotiated. I don't know what there is to negotiate. This is about opening up the government. We have offered them several off-ramps now. The Democrats want something that's totally untenable. As Senator Barrasso said, I mean, they want $1.5 trillion in new spending. They want free health care for people who are non-citizens in this country. That is just a flat non-starter. It doesn't pass the Senate, it won't pass the House, it won't be signed into law by the President. What you do have is a bill that's passed the House, sitting at the desk in the Senate, that the President's prepared to sign to open up the government. So I'm not sure, people keep saying, you know, negotiate what? I don't know what that is right now. The government needs to open up, and then we're happy to sit down and talk about any other issues that Democrats want to talk about.
Does President Trump need to get more involved in these negotiations, though, bringing Democrats to the White House? Would you sit in on those negotiations?
Well, at some point, but open up the government first. I mean, I think the president is willing to sit down with the governments, and yes, I would expect that we would all want to participate in any such meeting. But as we said, open up the government, and that can happen.
Leader Thune, on that front, when was the last time you spoke with Chuck Schumer, and do you believe that the House should come back into session?
I think the House did their work. They passed the bill, and the play, as you all know right now, the action's in the Senate.
And when was the last time you spoke with Senator Schumer?
I talk to Chuck on a somewhat regular basis. We're on the floor all the time. If he wants to talk to me, our offices are right down the hallway from each other. He knows my cell phone number, and if he's got something else to offer up, other than this crazy, unserious, unrealistic proposal they have out there, we're prepared to have that conversation. But open up the government first. One more.
The summit is now off. It's on hold for now. Do you see Putin as the impediment to peace? And is your Russia sanctions bill something that you intend to put on the Senate floor within the next month?
We want to put it on the floor when the White House believes it's useful to them to get Putin to the table and to get a deal that ends the war. So we're prepared to act. We work closely with Lindsey Graham. Lindsey, as you know, is a lead sponsor. He's got 85 co-sponsors in the Senate, Republican and Democrat. So we want to do everything we can to support the president, his team's efforts, and the efforts of our allies to bring this the bloodshed to an end and a peaceful conclusion to that war.
Did the president indicate whether he's pulling Paul Ingracia's nomination? Did the president indicate whether he's doing
I think they'll have something official to say about that, but you know what we've said, and you'll probably be hearing from them soon. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
And that was Senate Majority Leader John Thune speaking to the press, saying that the Democrats continue to vote to close the government, and saying that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has his phone number, and if he has anything to offer, he can give him a call. The U.S. is working to counter the CCP on rare earths. Joining us to discuss is David Blackman, energy policy analyst and advisor. He's also a senior contributor for Forbes. Good afternoon to you, David. Can you talk to us about how significant was China's move to restrict the flow of rare earths?
It was very extreme, really, trying to, control the export of these minerals and the products made from them, not only from the Chinese mainland, but also from third-party countries that use the minerals that have been imported from China is a pretty extraordinary move to try to clamp down on the entire global market for these things. So it's something that not just the United States, but Europe and much of the rest of the world is going to have to try to respond to and find a way, I think, at least in the United States case, to de-link ourselves from these Chinese-controlled supply chains.
So why is China doing something so extreme? Why is it clamping down?
Well, China controls the vast majority of the market. They control 2/3 of all the production of rare earth minerals across the world. They control 90% of the refining capacity, 90% of the magnet manufacturing capacity of these high-grade magnets that are so critical for use in electric vehicles, wind turbines, and nuclear power stations, and new generation nuclear kinds of processors, and also for the U.S. military. And most of our modern weapon systems use these high-grade magnets as part of their infrastructure. So it's a very important trade internationally, not just for China and America and Europe, but really for every country that wants to have a modern technology and a military infrastructure as well.
So, what I'm trying to get to here is, what I'm trying to get at, what is China after by doing this?
Oh, well, they're trying to protect their market, their hegemony in the market. They don't want other countries necessarily to be able to independently produce and refine and process. Let's say the United States, which has massive reserves of rare earth minerals known to exist in our country. Let's say we're able to jumpstart our mining industry and build, a number of large processing and refining facilities and battery making plants and chip making plants to make the chips that are also made from these rare earth minerals. That cuts into China's control of the market and their share of the market, and potentially even harms the Chinese economy because of that. It's a big business in China. And so they're just trying, China is a rational actor. People need to remember, we spend too much time trying to vilify other countries. China is just a rational actor in a global market, and they have a market share that they're trying to protect, and this is how they do it. And now, trying to clamp down on the actions of third-party countries is a pretty extraordinary step to take. And that's really what the Trump administration has been responding to for the last 2 weeks. But they're a rational actor trying to protect market share, and that's really what this boils down to.
Okay, I would argue that China's a rational actor in some aspects, but it's not in other aspects. I wouldn't say across the board. And of course, we can't ignore China's human rights record as well, right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So earlier you mentioned the importance of these rare earth minerals. So if they're so important, how did Western nations allow China to gain such dominance in these critical minerals in the first place?
Yeah, it all goes to the tension between mining activity, fossil fuel use in the United States and the rest of the world, and environmental protection. We have this radical environmental movement currently in the United States. It goes all the way back to the 1960s. And that environmental movement became very powerful in the US and Europe throughout the 1970s. And as we had this opening to China at the same time, thanks to Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon and how all that began, it became pretty apparent very quickly that China was home to massive reserves of these kinds of minerals. And the Western world made a decision in the late 70s, early 80s to essentially get out of the mining business and basically export the pollution, the environmental impacts, the emissions from that activity to other parts of the world. So they're out of sight, out of mind to voters back here in America. And so it was a convenient way for politicians to show themselves as favoring policies to clean up the environment, when really all they were really doing was transferring the industrial activity and the pollution and emissions that occur from that activity to another part of the world where we didn't see on the evening news every day. And that's really when this all germinated, and we become progressively more dependent on the supply chains controlled by China ever since, to the point where we have to import 80% of our needs here in the United States.
So, David, in your view, how seriously do you think the Trump administration is treating this situation right now, the latest move by China?
Well, I think they're treating it as an emergency situation, as we saw Monday with this new agreement with Australia and Prime Minister Albanese. But with President Trump, with this $8.5 billion plan to boost production and refining of these minerals in Australia, to much of it to be exported to the United States for our use here in this country. At the same time, the administration is trying to streamline the permitting processes for new mining operations here in the United States and looking for ways to boost investments to create new refining and processing capacity here in the U.S. as well. Because today, so much we're the second largest producer of rare earth minerals in the world, but it's just about 1/7 of what China produces. And most of what we produce in the United States is actually exported to China to be refined and processed. And the magnets are built in China and then re-exported back here to the United States. And so this is not a sustainable situation, especially because of the military needs for these kinds of minerals and those magnets and chips.
So, David, this collaboration between the United States and Australia on critical minerals, theoretically speaking, these two countries combined, do they have enough rare earths to completely eliminate dependence on China?
Yes, absolutely. Sure we do. We have enough in the United States to supply our own needs. But the problem we have here is that at least over the past several decades, it's taken 15 to 20 years from the time a new mine is proposed until you get first production out of it. Obviously, we don't have 15 to 20 years to resolve this situation with China. And that's why you see the administration making the move with Australia on Monday. In July, they made a significant deal with a company called MP Materials in California, which is the nation's most sizable refiner of these materials and which manufactures these batteries there in California. And they're going to be making other deals that right now they're looking for ways to, gain an equity interest in an enormous rare earth minerals mine in the southwestern coast of Greenland, which is, just not far from the United States and a friendly country. And so the administration's moving very aggressively on this. I believe we're probably going to have a situation here in the coming months when the president declares a national emergency related to this situation, which would give him some more extraordinary powers to enter into these kinds of agreements and move very quickly to open new mines and reopen mothballed mines and factories. So this is a big deal. It's a real national it's a national security crisis for the United States. I truly believe that.
Wow, it sounds like a very serious situation. I mean, what do you think about Trump slapping tariffs on China, 100% additional tariffs? Do you think that's going to help with the situation? Do you think it could be effective in motivating China to pull back or walk back their latest move?
Well, I think it's an effective tactic in a negotiation. The United States market is so enormous. The Chinese economy is greatly harmed by tariffs that we, apply to imports from their country. There's no question about that. And so, and it's just one of many tools the president has, in these negotiations to try to get China to ease the pressure off on the rare earth sector. And so this is going to be a very complex negotiation involving a lot of different things. I know the president is meeting with President Xi at the end of this month. Hopefully that'll be a productive meeting, but I just think China has such a self-interest in controlling this market because it gives them influence, not just economically, but militarily and from a national security perspective over not just the United States, but a lot of other countries around the world, that it is going to be very aggressive in protecting this market position that it now dominates.
Okay, David, I just want to get one more comment from you. Overall, who has more cards to play here? Who has more leverage in this situation?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. Because our market is so big in the United States, President Trump holds almost all the cards in negotiations with most every other country on earth except for China. China is a very powerful country with a very powerful economy and a growing military establishment that is not the equal of the United States, but certainly, is capable. And so this is a real negotiation in which I think both sides are going to have to make concessions in order to get to a solution that works for both sides. And that's going to be hard to do, but, we've seen President Trump make a lot of deals in his time, and hopefully he'll be able to reach an agreement with President Xi that satisfies everyone.
All right, well, we'll keep a close eye on this. Always a pleasure to speak with you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has begun serving a 5-year prison sentence in Paris. It marks the first time a modern French leader has been imprisoned, sparking strong reactions across the country. NTD international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
Nicolas Sarkozy began serving a 5-year prison sentence this morning at La Santé prison in Paris. The former French president waved to a crowd of supporters before being taken inside the prison walls. It marks the first time in modern French history that a president has gone to jail. Prison authorities have prepared a special cell for the former head of state.
He will be under a specific regime, an isolation regime, like other prisoners of these quarters, like around 100 other prisoners in France. That means that he will be alone in his cell, that he will always have access to walks alone twice per day, he will have access to a recreation room alone.
The 70-year-old former leader, who served from 2007 to 2012, was convicted of criminal conspiracy and illegal campaign financing linked to funds from Libya during his 2007 presidential campaign. His lawyers have filed an immediate request for release, calling the decision to incarcerate him before his appeal unjustified. Sarkozy maintains his innocence and has called the case a judicial scandal. Despite being retired from politics, Sarkozy remains a symbol within France's conservative movement. The former French president has received strong support from members of the public and political figures, and his imprisonment has stirred debate over the relationship between politics and justice. Several legal experts view his case as politically charged and potentially biased, comparing it to other recent cases involving politicians, such as Marine Le Pen, who was convicted earlier this year and banned from running for office.
strictement pénal du terme.
In my opinion, the commission of the offense has not been conclusively proven in the terms of the law, and the materiality of the facts does not appear to me to have been fully established during the trial. There is serious doubt. On March 31st, 2025, as you know, there was the trial of Marine Le Pen regarding irregular payments to parliamentary assistants in the European Parliament, and before that even other cases. In general, and based on what we see, we can say there is that judiciary system has some takes, especially looking at the Magistrates' Union, which regularly takes political positions on topics.
Sarkozy's case stems from a decade-long investigation that has fueled political divisions and raised questions about political financing at the highest levels of power. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
One of Cambodia's biggest Chinese-owned companies is accused of running a massive criminal empire. The U.S. says Prince Group and its founder Chen Ji led one of Asia's largest transnational crime syndicates. Last week, the U.S. seized nearly 130,000 Bitcoin, worth $15 billion, in its biggest ever crypto bust. The U.K. also froze 19 of Chen's London properties, including one worth over $133 million. Now, Singapore and Thailand have joined the global probe. Chen is charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and forced labor, and faces up to 40 years in prison if convicted. He comes from China's Fujian province and the political stronghold of Chinese leader Xi Jinping and his close ally Cai Qi. Here's more on that story.
A Chinese-born tycoon, Chen Ji, founder of Cambodia's Prince Group, is on the run. One of his fraud compounds near the nation's capital is now abandoned. Court papers show he ran at least 10 fraud centers across Cambodia using so-called phone farms with millions of fake numbers. John Eisenberg, U.S. Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department, has accused the group of trafficking workers, locking them in prison-like conditions and forcing them to scam people online. Chen holds multiple passports and started out in China's Fujian province. After moving to Cambodia in 2011, he became a citizen through investment and launched Prince Group in 2015. The company grew fast into real estate, banking, casinos, and even aviation. It now operates in over 30 countries and territories. But Chen's path to fortune is murky, with no clear record of where his startup money came from. He also served as an advisor to the previous Cambodian prime minister and current leader, receiving Cambodia's highest national honor. A report by U.S.-based think tank Pacific Economics claims the group invested over $1 billion in resorts projects in Palau, allegedly serving as a tool for Beijing's political influence. China has repeatedly pressured Palau to sever diplomatic ties with Taiwan. In March this year, Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs warned that China has long used Chinese business people and criminal organizations with Chinese backgrounds to infiltrate Palau under the guise of land development and investment. The ministry added that these networks engage in money laundering, gambling, fraud, and other illegal activities to economically infiltrate and pressure the country.
For more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on NTD.